It appears Jackson Arnold is already being disrespected by the media.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, hanging out with us. We will discuss Auburn basketball and what they need to do to continue their hot start to the season as they visit the Georgia Bulldogs. But it already seems like, and I mean, we all saw this coming. That Jackson Arnold is not going to be seen as a top half quarterback in the SEC. We all saw this coming as soon as Hugh picked up the commitment from his future quarterback. And the latest list that I saw, this is by Fansided, a writer named Chris Landers over at Fansided, ranks Jackson Arnold as the 13th quarterback in the SEC. Is he top 5 right now? No, he's not. But to say there's only 3 quarterback situations worse than him, I am going to push back a little bit there.
A little bit being the key word. I get it if he doesn't even, if he barely squeaks into the top 10. It's just there's a pedigree there. There's some tools. A lot of these guys are being rated higher than him based on ability, or based on projection of traits and tools. And so that's why I thought, well, he's got all the tools. He's a 5-star, and he's got a body of work where he's played 8, 9, 10 games. Some of these guys haven't. So just by default there, I thought he would have been a little higher. Would I put him in the top 10? Probably right outside the top 10, maybe at 10 when we talk about the list. But he is getting no credit for being a very toolsy 5-star, highly hyped kid out of high school when others are being credited for that, and for having some SEC experience under his belt. I mean, some of these other guys have never played a down in the SEC that transferred from other schools on this list. So, yeah, it surprises me that he was that low. I wouldn't have put him in the top half, but I think he could have got a couple of spots higher.
It is interesting, though, that he was put in the top half by several outlets a year ago.
Right.
Because of all the things that you just said. Traits, ability, upside, and all summer. I mean, I said it a ton, and I'm sure you agreed with me, was, okay, well, Oklahoma's situation stinks. Like, they're replacing so many on the offense, and then over the course of time, it seemed like all of their receivers got hurt. But now all of that argument when it comes to Jackson Arnold, despite him being in a better situation, all of that goes out of the way. He didn't suddenly get less athletic. He didn't suddenly, become a worse quarterback. I'm with you. Is he top half of the SEC right now? No. But right now they've got him only above Missouri's quarterbacks, and they've got a Bo Pribula / Sam Horn, Zach Calzada at Kentucky, which I'm not going to lie, I totally forgot he was at Kentucky. And then Mississippi State's Blake Shapen, which I actually think Blake Shapen's okay. I just think the situation in Mississippi State is absolutely abysmal, absolutely brutal. And to say Jackson Arnold is better than only those 3 guys / situations, if that's true, that is not good. That is not good for Auburn. Right above him is Alabama's quarterbacks, Austin Mack / Ty Simpson. I think I'd rather have Jackson Arnold than either of those guys. At 11, they've got Gunnar Stockton of Georgia. I'm a little surprised he's this low on the list. And then they've got Taylon Green at 10 for Arkansas. I like Taylon Green, but I think I would rather have Jackson Arnold than Taylon Green.
And number 9, too. Who was number 9?
Austin Simmons.
Austin Simmons. And I know Austin Simmons, stopped me if I've heard this before, all the tools, but hasn't done it yet. Mm-hmm. So how is that any different than what we're talking about? So
it's after that. So that would put him at 9 if you had him above Austin Simmons.
Yeah,
but all the guys ahead of him, so the top half, Marcel Reed, Nico, Diego Pavia, Arch Manning, John Mateer at 4, I don't love, but I do think he's better than Jackson Arnold. Garrett Nussmeier, Lenora Sellers, DJ Lagway, like those guys should be ahead of him.
Absolutely.
But I disagree. 13th is too low. I think he's 10th or 11th.
Yeah, I could go for. I could absolutely. That is a point bullseye. I could go for 10th or 11th as well, and could even slide up into the 9th spot if there's an argument to be made there with potential in ceiling. You can't have it one way and give a quarterback credit in this ranking based upon tools and ceiling and potential, and then not Jackson Arnold because he was in a place at Oklahoma that gave him no help at all. So interesting. You would think that they would look at this and go, well, gosh, the offensive line, incredible coming back, and look at that receiving room. Just that in itself, I think, would give him a bump or two because he's in such a better situation than he was last year.
Mm-hmm.
With single,
I just think
Simmons, tell me what receiving room that's a top 3, top 4 SEC receiving room, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, offensive line, would you say that Auburn has one of the top 3 or 4 returning offensive lines in the conference?
So they have one of the most experienced offensive lines in the conference.
But look who they added in the portal too. You got to take that in consideration. They got the 2 best portal offensive linemen to add to the most experience coming back. So you just by that argument, you would have him in the top 4. So you've got a top 4 receiving room and perhaps a top 4 offensive line room, and you got good running backs, but yet he's going to be 13th. Doesn't add up.
Another question I want to ask here is how much of the perception of Jackson Arnold hinges on like what you actually think about Hugh Freeze. Like if you don't believe in Hugh Freeze, you don't believe in Jackson Arnold. Or if you have questions about Hugh Freeze's offense, which is the camp I'm currently in, you have questions about Jackson Arnold taking that next step. And if you firmly don't believe in Hugh Freeze, which may be, the writer of this list, then you don't believe in Jackson Arnold. These two, we talked about how Payton Thorne and Hugh Freeze are going to be tied together. The way Jackson Arnold and Hugh Freeze are going to be tied together, it's going to be even closer.
You are taking the words right out of my mouth. I was going to tell you there are 2 external factors that have nothing to do with Jackson Arnold that I think directly contribute to Jackson Arnold being 13. And their names are Hugh Freeze and Payton Thorne.
Mm.
See, they're looking at what Payton Thorne did the last 2 years, and Jackson Arnold is paying a penalty for that. They're saying, oh, he didn't play well in this system. Hugh didn't develop him. So why would that be? He is getting, blamed for or paying the price for something that is out of his control. And I think the same thing with Hugh Freeze. It is tied to Hugh Freeze. They do believe that, and again, that's where it just is a head scratcher. Who at Oklahoma has developed quarterbacks, and you got Mateer at 4?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand that. I mean, this is the place that the guy that you're dogging at 13 came from, and the reason why you're dogging him. But but another guy is supposed to go off the charts unless they feel like the new
there's some inconsistency for sure.
Yeah.
I want to ask you another question about this, and I do think it will kind of put in perspective of how much this is specifically on Hugh Freeze. So that's coming up in just a second, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is it's the real place to get sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win while enjoying all of the football or basketball action. It's all about the over and under. So how do you play? You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players and their specific stat line. And if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. All of the different picks have different multipliers. So it's super fun. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. So Jackson Arnold, 13th on this list of ranking SEC quarterbacks according to FanDuel. We both agree, maybe a spot or 2 higher, but we should. I mean, it's not like he's like 10 spots off or anything like that. But I do want to ask you this. Let's assume Payton Thorne was coming back. Some Auburn fans just may have driven off the road, but let's just assume. Where would he be on this list? Because I think he'd be 13.
I think he'd be a little bit higher.
Do you? Okay.
I think they would, because they would look at the stats progression from year 1 to year 2 and figure that year 3 would even show more improvement. Essentially, you'd have to assume that. So that would be enough to bump him to 11, I think.
Interesting. Because like with that argument though, like, okay, let's assume that that would be the case. If he was coming back, he'd be seen as the 11th ranked quarterback in the SEC, which I think statistically you could certainly back that up. So I'm not really pushing back against it. But we all are kind of in the same boat that like we all think Jackson Arnold is a step up, right?
Right. Yes.
So to me, 13 is too low.
Unproven commodity, maybe the last thing you saw, maybe recency bias, all those things, who he's tied to, the Payton Thorne factor before, all those intangibles are unfortunately weighing him down in this. And I think that, all those factors, I get it. People want to look at past performances and trends. So it just, again, it speaks volumes to me that where he was last year as opposed to where he is this year. And then the quarterback took his place in the same system he failed at, where that quarterback is, unless they really have a lot of faith in the new offensive coordinator.
Right. I just, the upside that Jackson Arnold represents, like all these guys that they talk about towards the bottom half of this conference, like I do think the floors are pretty low, especially in Missouri, and that we've seen Zach Calzada firsthand and Blake Shapen. Once again, not really about Blake Shapen, more about Mississippi State. And then, we'll see what happens with Alabama's quarterback situation and Georgia. And I mean, I think Arkansas is kind of in a rude situation going into the season, but the ceiling that I think Jackson Arnold has is tremendous. And we're going to say it a million times, it just depends on the scheme that Hugh Freeze is going to be able to put together for this offense. And when you look at the pieces around him, like you said, Darrell, the offensive line, I think Auburn's going to have a top 5 SEC offensive line. Once again, I wasn't as hard or down on last year's offensive line as most people's, whatever. I think if you have a quarterback that's holding the ball for 3 seconds, staring at a wide open receiver, and you're not throwing the football, I don't know how much of that's on the offensive line, but we can nitpick all day. The receivers took a step forward. The tight end room took a step back. The running back room took a step back. But all in all, like I think the offensive core is better than it was a year ago. Now it's all about play calling and scheme. And if you're this offensive genius that has been discussed for a long time that we all think you are, you have been, you got to do it. We're out of excuses here.
The ceiling part is very, very interesting because I agree. I mean, you know that there are very few quarterbacks in the SEC that have that ceiling. I think about a situation like Graham Mertz that came from Wisconsin, and it was ridiculed. It was, what are they doing? What is Florida doing? And he played pretty well for Florida before he got hurt.
Yeah, he was fine.
He actually played decent, and he improved from his position where he was at Wisconsin. I don't know why people automatically assume that people can't make that leap or can't make that jump. It's, oh no, he's not going to get any better. He's going to get worse. He's not going to improve. He's going to Auburn.
I think that's more about, I think it's folks making it not about Jackson Arnold, making it about Hugh Freeze.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if they would do a little deep dive and understand variables and cause and effect and say, what makes a quarterback successful? There are 3 things. Zach, it's since the beginning of time: a good offensive line, a good receiving core, and a good running game to back you up. If you have those 3 things, you have to be horrible to not be a decent quarterback. And Jackson Arnold has the tools to use those 3 factors to improve and be a good quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah. So once again, I think 13 is too low. I think 8 would have been too high. I think we're somewhere in the middle. And where you put them, it depends on your opinion of Hugh Freeze. So let us know your thoughts. You can comment down below or let us know on socials if you're listening, or over at thebarnauburn.com. Would love to have a discussion there as well about where does Jackson Arnold rank in the SEC. I think 10. I think 10 is where I'm at. It sounds like you think 9. Is that fair?
9 or 10. I could make an argument made for not between 9 and 11. So 10's a good number.
Okay. There you go. So yeah, let us know. The number 1 team in all of college basketball heads to Georgia. And I think there's a chance that this team plays even more fired up than they did at South Carolina a week ago, which was not very much. I think we see a different team from a week ago. That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Darrell, can you imagine wagering anywhere than with our friends at FanDuel? Can you imagine it?
Imagine. Absolutely not.
Yeah. Sadly, we can't wager on your Steelers anymore. They put you out of your misery.
Yeah.
It's done. It's over. But hey, there's still plenty of huge playoff games this weekend, and FanDuel wants to make sure that you are ready to rock and roll. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going throughout the NFL playoffs. And hey, we're gonna have the peak season for college basketball is right around the corner too. So make sure you're ready to rock and roll. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today to get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Auburn heads to Georgia. And we've talked about this. We had the same conversation a week ago where I thought Auburn was going to go. They were going to go into South Carolina and rout them. That did not happen. They let South Carolina throw the first punch, and Auburn did not adjust well, and they had to fight to survive, and thankfully they did. We saw a team really make a distinct effort to deliver the starting punch against Mississippi State, led by Chad Baker-Mazara, who appears to be the heart and soul of this team. What do we see on the road at Georgia? I think there's going to be just as many Auburn fans as there will be Georgia fans, just the proximity of it and the financial aspect of it. But I think this is a team that, while they obviously love Janai, and they see Janai as, their on-the-court leader, I think they took a little bit of a challenge of saying, hey, we can still be the number one team without our number one player. I think we saw that this past weekend, and I think Georgia is going to get a lot of Chad Baker-Mazara and Chaney Johnson on Saturday.
So this Georgia game is very interesting because Georgia does play different at Stegman Coliseum. They're a different basketball team. They've got some big wins at home. Mike White seems to have Bruce's number a little bit as a coach. They struggled against Tennessee 2 nights ago. There's no doubt they struggled. They scored 52 points. The way Auburn locks you down defensively, that bodes well. Now, I get it. It was in Tennessee, but still, I don't consider them an offensive juggernaut. So, to me, if Auburn can get in the upper 60s, this game's very winnable comfortably. That's the key. Can Auburn come out? You don't want Georgia feeling good about themselves early on at home because they've got some rejuvenation. The crowd's been excited about basketball again at Georgia, so you don't want that. I think it's going to be a tough game. I really do. I think it's going to be a very difficult game. I think it's going to be in single digits. Do I think Auburn wins the game? Yes, but it's one of those that I don't feel real good about. I'm a little nervous because of Georgia getting waxed a couple nights ago. How will they respond? They've played well at home. Auburn struggled a little bit on the road, closing out games. Well, I say closing out games. They played a better second half against South Carolina than they did.
Technically they did close it out.
Yeah. Texas, they couldn't, they didn't finish real well in Texas. So Texas and South Carolina are near the bottom of the SEC right now, and that's your 2 road wins.
South Carolina's 0-4. Texas is now 1-3.
Yes. So I expect pardon the pun, a dogfight, and I think that Auburn's depth and their defensive acumen will be the difference. I think Georgia's going to struggle to get into the 60s. They're going to struggle to get into the 60s against Auburn. And that's why I think Auburn will get into the 60s, and that'll be enough to get the W.
If Georgia struggles to get into the 60s, I don't think this game is close.
See, but Auburn hasn't been an offensive juggernaut. The first half of the Texas game they were, but they slowed down in the second half. First half of the South Carolina game, they were not. I could see Auburn, winning this game 68-59, 67-59, something like that, and be in the upper echelon of the 60s, and Georgia being in the upper echelon of the 50s, maybe Auburn hitting a couple, going to the line up 6 with about 30 seconds to go, or up 7 and then extending that lead.
Yeah, we would all take that in a heartbeat,
Oh,
right?
you take a 1 point like you did a couple years ago when Auburn was the number 1 team in the country and won by 1. And this Georgia team is better than that team. This coach is better than Tom Crean. And so I think that this is going to be a nice, very nice test for Auburn on the road. And I would have said 2 weeks ago that this 3-game road stretch that Texas would have been the best team that Auburn would have faced on the road. I have changed my mind on that and feel like Georgia will be. This will be the best team they've played other than Duke in a true road game.
In a true road game. I agree with that. I agree with that. Because for some reason we aren't counting Houston as a true road game. I know why we're not, but I get it. I get it. Yeah, it's still so early in SEC play where we're learning. Like we knew going into it, like there's no way all of these teams are as good as we think they are. There's no way. And some of them have kind of shown us. Texas, it seems like they've shown us like, okay, maybe they were a little bit of a pretender. Oklahoma, maybe a little bit of a pretender. Arkansas, shockingly 0-4. I don't know what you do if you're an Arkansas fan right now. I just don't know. Florida, it's like they're 2-2, but like 2 really respectable losses. Like we'll see. Mississippi State 2-2.
I don't count the Missouri game as a respectable loss. I do not.
Really?
You lose at home to an unranked Missouri team who Auburn boat raced a week and a half earlier. I don't think that's
Missouri's 3-1 right now.
I get it.
Their only loss is Auburn.
But you lost at home to an unranked Missouri team. I can't consider that respectable.
Mississippi State 2-2, but their 2 losses are
they're good,
Auburn and they play somebody else.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
And they lost at home to Kentucky, but Kentucky's playing very, very good basketball right now.
Yeah. So to me, it's like we're still looking. We're still trying to figure out who's really legit and who's still kind of a pretender and all of this. And look, I think that's going to be the narrative around Georgia. If Auburn beats Georgia on Saturday, there's going to be questions of like, well, is Georgia good? They're 2-3 in conference play.
But here's the thing that makes this game such an important swing game.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does it get you to 5-0, it gives you a week until you play that home game against Tennessee.
Oh gosh, the timing. And like the timing already was ideal because of Tennessee.
You go 5-0 into the Tennessee game with another week to get your big guy back healthy.
Yes.
And then the second thing that I wouldn't underestimate is we've talked about this on the post-game show. A lot of Auburn fans should help neutralize that home court advantage because they probably got tickets early this year and they were accessible because Georgia fans didn't think they were going to have this kind of year.
Right.
Tickets were available. Auburn fans snatched them up because, oh, by the way, I want to pay $80 as opposed to $800, and I'm only an hour and a half away or 2 hours, whatever it is, to Athens. This could sound –
there are so many Auburn fans in Atlanta. It's crazy.
And this could sound – I don't even know what Stegman holds, but this could be one of those games where you can definitely hear an audible presence of Auburn fans there, and that helps neutralize that a little bit. That now Kentucky travels – and they were probably there. But here's the deal. Georgia fans are probably more apt to buy tickets to go watch Georgia play Kentucky if they think Georgia's not going to be very good than they do Auburn, even though they're supposed to be like a natural rival. Kentucky is that name brand people want. And there's probably a lot of Kentucky fans, too, that are transplanted down there. So it'll be interesting. But I think Auburn will have the largest visiting base out of all the teams that Georgia plays at home this year. I think Auburn will be, other than Georgia Tech.
And obviously there was such a large contingent of Auburn fans at South Carolina. Maybe that's what made the difference. I don't know, but it wasn't like it was some, natural boost, Stegman holds 10,500 looks like.
So if you can get 2,000 Auburn fans in there, you'll hear a noticeable difference.
You say 2,000?
Yeah.
I bet there's more than 2,000 Auburn fans.
Well, if there's 3 or 4, then it's going to be almost like a neutral site game split. Because
I think so.
Because not only do Auburn fans travel, when they get there, they make noise. They're not a bunch of blue hairs sitting on their hands when they watch the game. When they, if you're paying good money to go or paying money to go watch Auburn on the road, it's because you're desperate and really, really wanting to see this team because you can't see them at home. With that comes an inherent enthusiasm. You're going to cheer your butt off.
Sure. Yeah, I love it.
Right. So that could be the X factor. And the fact, but this is a big swing game. You go 5-0 and take a week off and then get Tennessee at home and you're laying in the weeds for them with perhaps a broom return. And I'm sure that place is going to be jumping. Who knows? Maybe the ESPN people will be there. the game day people, Billis and those guys.
Electric.
So, yeah.
Electric. All right. So you got Auburn winning by like 7 or 8.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I'm in the same boat. We agree. Let us know your thoughts down below or on Twitter or at the barn. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, other socials, Instagram, Darrell Dapp, Wednesdays and Fridays with Hugh. Live basketball right when it clock hits 000, we come on.
We're there, baby.
And then we've been doing this kind of live fun show with Kyle Rush, Charlie 5, 8 o'clock Sunday nights for the barn. That's been a fun show too.
Yeah, that has been fun. I've definitely started looking forward to that for sure. So, hey, please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.